You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as one of Canada's best photographers. His online series, Taking Photos of Strangers, has gone viral on TikTok and Instagram, which has allowed him to cultivate over 300,000 followers online. So welcome to the podcast, Darius Bashar. Darius, how are you? And what have you been up to over the first 3 days of 2023?
Joel, thank you for having me. I, in this moment, feel fantastic. And it's January the 3rd, and I've had a fairly productive first 3 days of the year, which is nice because sometimes these days are really slow and people don't want to do anything.
I've been seeing the posts online where people say between Christmas and New Year's, it's just all a blur of like not getting off the couch, not knowing what day it is. So it's good to hear that someone is actually active and being productive during that period.
Yeah, I will qualify it by saying in the last 20 years, this is the most rest I've ever taken in December. So I think the reason I've been very productive in the last 3 days is because of that rest. And it was 90% guilt-free, but there was still some guilt as an entrepreneur, as an artist. You know, you always feel like there's more you could be doing. But I'm proud to say I'm feeling really rested and ready for the next creation.
So does that allow you to feel re-energized and refocused and in a better space to kick off this year and achieve some big dreams, big goals?
Yeah, I think so. I feel better than I have in 20 years. I just turned 40 a week ago, and I feel healthy, I feel ready, and I still feel anxious. And I'm just coming to understand that anxiousness might just be there for the rest of my life. And that's okay, because there's ways to work with it and transmute it.
Do you think that anxiousness is actually, some part of it is a good thing, that it tells you that you're actually excited and that you care? It's like if you felt nothing, that you know, it's like as a musician getting on stage, it's like you should feel some nerves and you should feel something getting on stage. You know, even if you've done it 1,000 times, it tells you that you still care. You still care about the outcome. You still want to put on a good show. You still want to entertain those that have spent their hard-earned cash to come see you.
Yeah, I totally agree. It also tells you that you're doing something that's exciting and maybe reaching some sort of creative edge, and it's not stagnant and boring. Yeah, it's a balance, because it can drive me to, you know, makes you hungrier sometimes when you think there's something looming. And it can become devastating and gut-wrenching when it consumes you. So there's some sort of balance with that darker energy that I've been working on for most of my life.
For our listeners that might also have some level of anxiety, do you have any tips to help them overcome that? It sounds like you have a little bit of experience and you've found ways that have helped you with that.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I have so many rituals and so many practices that really stem from the gut-wrenching parts. And so meditation, journaling, walks, movement, exercise, men's groups. There's like so many different things that every year I'm really lucky that I find one or two new things that I incorporate into my rituals. And the moment I veer away from those rituals, I can feel things change. And I can feel, it's like, I don't do well when I am just a human. And when I don't have those practices, I'm just a human. And it's really hard being just a human. But when I have those practices, I tap into the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it. And I'm a soul having a human experience, which is totally different than just being a human. And that connection to something above and beyond me unites me to everything as well. And it's connected to purpose, and purpose is connected to drive for me.
What do you think is so hard about being a human? I have my ideas on that, but why is the human condition such a tough one?
Again, I can only speak from my experience, but there's a heaviness, there's a, like hopelessness, there's, like when you go into it, it's just like there's a lot of dark things that happen in the world. There's a lot of impossibilities, there's a lot of heaviness, there's a lot of denseness, like, and if you are only that, it's easy to see negativity everywhere. And for me, it's like, it's balance. I don't want, the other side of it is, I don't want to just be a soul, because that, negates the purpose of my soul coming to this planet, and I'm spiritually bypassing the experience. So I'm trying to find out, again, balance is like one of the fundamental themes of my life, that balance between the soul who chose to come here and have a human experience. And for me, that's just like so deeply connected to creativity and art, without bypassing and just sitting and meditating and being like, I don't care about anything happening on the planet, I am a superior being. It's like, yo, you're missing it. You came here for the ride. Enjoy the ride, but don't become the ride.
Yeah, we're the only species that's aware of our incoming death. And that, I mean, if that doesn't put a heaviness on you, I don't know what will. I mean, if you look at rabbits and dogs and cats, they live in the moment because they don't know that they will die at some point. It's just something that ends up happening. So it's, when you think about it, us be at all times being aware that, like, yeah, we're all gonna die. We just don't know when. I mean, if that's not grounds for a little heaviness, I don't know what is.
Yes. And for me, it's the exact opposite. Death is the most inspiring, liberating, load lightening thing in my life. And I know I'm not the majority here. There's a reason I carry this guy around everywhere. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can get focus on that. Memento Mori. It says, you could leave life right now. And when I saw this, I'm like, oh my God, it's not just me. There's others who vibe with this concept of it's just unknown. It's so precious. Life, you could literally be the healthiest person in the world and get hit by a bus and it's over. And there's something about that just focused me and gave me a fire and a drive of, like, I'm a photographer. I'm like, there's more photos I need to take. There's more words I need to say. There's more words I need to write. There's more kisses I need to give. And there's no way I'm ready for that yet. So I got to get going. I got to move and do things.
You see that a lot in Stoicism, that they study death, and they daily they think about death, and they what is it they say, that death is one of the things that allows you to live. Like, thinking of death is what can inspire you to live today. And Steve Jobs has that famous commencement speech where he talks about, he was diagnosed with cancer, and that has allowed him to live better, even though, he'll pass away sooner than most. It allowed him to know that today is precious because I don't have that many more of these coming.
Exactly. It's that great paradox, that irony. Yeah, I got this from the Daily Stoic, actually. And I
Is that
literally
Ryan
carry it.
Ryan Holiday? Is that the Daily
Exactly.
Stoic?
Yeah. 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 I carry it all the time. And it's so instrumental to my creativity, my spirituality, and so much of the work I do.
Do you think that darkness and that anxiety that actually helps you as a photographer?
Yes. And again, I'm going to use that B word, balance, because if you know me, you know that I am a paradox, or maybe not, depends on your perspective. But um, I love the sacredness of the stuff we're talking about, life and its sacredness and God and soul. And I'm the silliest mofo you'll ever meet. I play, I'm silly, I'm goofy. I like have so much space and room for this dude. You know, I carry that skull with me everywhere, but I also have pictures of little Darius throughout my house because play and death, again, they're the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin. And yes, the anxiety drives me, but too much of it will kill me. The play lifts me, too much of it will make me ungrounded. So I play between the intersection of sacred and silly a lot.
I once had a vision of, so this was like a dream of vision of a young kid version of me came up to me and hugged my leg. So it was current age me being hugged by little me. And in that moment, I realized that I am an amalgamation of all the me's that have come before now. So when you have your picture of you as a child or you as a teenager, it's like you are all those different versions of you. And you as a kid that wanted to be a professional skateboarder or an NHL player or a photographer, all those dreams are within you. And it's like that makes me feel like I owe it to all the versions of myself to be the best version of me that keeps those dreams alive for those past versions. So
Yes.
that was like an eye-opening moment for me.
Yeah, you're talking about one of my secret weapons for photography. Uh, I totally made up this same similar to what you're talking about. I made up this thing. I called it Cosmic Family, and it was there inside me. There's my cosmic family, which is a composite of all these different versions of me: 5-year-old me, 8-year-old me, 12-year-old me, and they're not randomly picked ages. They're moments when something happened, and there's a deep imprint, and that template, that version of me, is like now stuck in time. And yeah, that was the moment for me when I realized when I'm triggered or when I'm excited, it's actually one part of me, one version of me that's having that experience. Particularly when you're triggered, you think your whole being is triggered, and you're like, hold on, it's not. One part of me is triggered, and then there's a whole cosmic family of selves here to support that part, not to fix that part or shun that part, or judge that part. And then it like I automatically got like, oh, I'm not fully collapsing here. And so I used that same practice. Later, I discovered it's an actual therapeutic modality. It's called internal family systems, which blew my mind. And I'm like, holy shit,
Got a
this is
snappy
crazy.
name to it. I like it.
It's from the 70s and it's now becoming very, very popular. And I remember when I sat with a practitioner and he was like, how do you know this stuff without knowing this stuff? And I'm like, well, maybe it's all just up there. And somehow I access the stuff that was already up there. But when you're trying to encourage someone to create, whether it's music or photos, it looks like I'm just talking to one man who's however old. But the reality is, there's maybe you as a 30, 40, whatever you are, man is like, yeah, I'm down to do this. But there's an 8-year-old version of you that's like, I don't want to be here. This is the stupidest shit ever. Why am I here? You know, and we can put that version of you in a room and say, go away, I hate you. But then this adult that I'm trying to take photos of can't be present, can't be empowered because there's an 8-year-old version of him yanking his arm saying, let's go. I don't want to be here. And so my approach became like, let's make space for all your parts. Let's witness and hear and support all your parts and let the younger parts know that they're not running the ship, because that's irresponsible to give like an 8-year-old, you know, like carte blanche in terms of like what's happening today. And so that became like a really powerful secret weapon for my photography processes, but also just for like anything.
So you can help the models you're taking pictures of, you can help them cultivate like a childlike wonder uh, during the photo shoot.
Yeah, I used to work with models when I started. They
I'm
were all
saying
like
model
models
just
and
as the
actors.
person being photographed, not
Now
like
they're like people.
supermodel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the difference there is like the people, most people, like 95% of the people I work with are not enthused about getting their photos taken. They've had a bad experience in the past, or they're secretly convinced they're not photogenic or they don't look their best. And so having them and their younger parts feel relaxed um, just gives you access to so much more creative juice. You know, I've seen this for a lot of different stuff. I also run a community called Artist Morning for, you know, kind, creative humans that want to meditate and journal together. And it's the same process. Slow this thing down so that we can go closer to our hearts, so that people can actually express what's in their hearts and in their souls.
So I like to start off these interviews by sharing with our listeners how the guests and I know each other. And it shows the importance of networking, of building community, of fostering relationships. So in our case, we go back to Elite Speakers Academy. So this was like I think it was a multi-day workshop that's run by Armin Shaffi, who was one of the first guests on this podcast probably 2.5 years ago.
Cool.
So how did you end up there at Elite Speakers Academy, and have you been using what you've learned there in your other endeavors since then?
Mm. I ended up there the same way I end up at a lot of these things. Someone connects me to the leader of a community, like Armin, and I'm fortunate enough to like have a photo shoot with them, and they often fall in love with the process and the photos, and they're like, you got to come to this thing. I got to introduce you to these people, and you got to come to this thing. And so that's how it worked with him. And we did a couple of different shoots, and then I did shoots for a lot of people in his program, and that was awesome. And it was a really intensive, you know, 3 days or whatever it was. And so I'm trying to remember the stuff we learned. Yeah, some of the stuff I did definitely implement. It gave me confidence, you know, like, okay, I've got stuff to share. He gave me some like tactics and tips. You know, I particularly like the thing that stands out right now. There was an exercise that was like, just get in the energy of being confident talking. We're going to remove the content, and you're actually just going to say blah, 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 and just be in the body of someone who's confident. And it was eye opening to see that everybody still felt, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Sure, yeah.
Everybody felt like shit. They still felt nervous when there's 3 people watching them, and the assignment was just say blah blah blah, and you're like, why do I still feel nervous? It's impossible to screw this thing up, you know. And you're like, wow, there's this thing underneath the content, and it's like if you just get into the energy of confidence, that'll give you an advantage. And so that silly little exercise stands out. And then I get to hang out with people I met at the 2 day, 3 day thing. So that's cool too.
Now that you mention it, I actually remember one of Armin's kind of most popular pictures that you see used around in articles and social media is one that you took of him, like the very close up. I just remember that now when you said, "Oh, I ended up there because I took pictures of Armin," and so I just put it all together that you have one of his most known photos. You were the one that took it, so
Cool.
so
I love hearing that.
that's pretty cool, yeah. And you were saying that once you take pictures with people, they fall in love with the process, they love the end results, and then they invite you to kind of come into their community. They probably also want you to come in and see what they do. So, you know, Armin inviting you to Elite Speakers Academy, probably also, you know, he's been in your wheelhouse of mastery, and he probably wants you to come into his to get to know him better as well, I would think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a truth to that. It's just been an amazing way to hang out with these really cool thought leaders. And also, it's been an amazing driver of business because when the person at the head of the community gives you, you know, a testimonial like that, like same thing happened with Giovanni Marseco and
Archie.
Archangel. Same thing happened with like Dan Sheck from Speakers Slam. So it's like I've been blessed to work with really awesome humans, and then they want to share what they believe in and what they get excited by, and then it's just like a mutually beneficial thing. Everyone's just supporting each other.
I think one of my top takeaways is even though, say, you and I aren't professional speakers, we're not someone that goes on stage and you know the speaking is the gift. It makes you realize that speaking is everything, communicating is everything, whether it's you at a job interview, whether it's you doing a photo shoot. You got to make people feel comfortable, and that was one of my biggest takeaways, is even though I don't want to be the next Tony Robbins, that it's actually helpful to become a confident, powerful speaker for any area of your life, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done a couple of speaker slam things, and I'm sort of in the same boat. Like, I don't think I want to be a professional speaker, um, but just doing scary things and sharing your voice, it's transferable to so many different things you do in life.
So, speaking of Speaker Slam, I wanted to kick off this episode powerfully. So, I reached out to someone, and I have some kind words here
Oh,
from the latest winner of Speaker Slam. So, this is from Marcos Mendoza, who you have history with. He's one of my favorite speakers, powerful dude, and you have a history with some photography. So, this is what Marcos has to say. He says, Darius is the living embodiment of what I would say is a combination of empathy, compassion, masculinity, femininity, creativity, and swag. He's a genuine soul that cares about others and has a sense of innocence to his endeavors. That's like the childlike wonder there. He looks out for others. He's polite, kind, and extremely powerful when he gets in the zone. He's the type of entrepreneur that you want to work with and the type of friend that you want to have. The photos he's captured of me have changed my life for the better. It's because of his vision that others have gotten to see the real me, the human me, the me that I wish and hope that all can see. Love, Darius. So that's from Marcos Mendoza.
I love that guy. That's beautiful. Wow. He's we've had some special moments. I think the first time I met him in person was here, and when I had this podcast called Create Therefore, and we had a 2-hour conversation of all things. And so it's like every single time I run into him again, it's usually a couple of months at a time. It's like something epic happens. We have these incredibly deep, transformative experiences. And it's been a wild ride watching him over the past few years. Yeah, through the powerhouse.
So was it the Speaker Slam that you just spoke at? That's the night that he won, wasn't it? Or is that two different events?
When I spoke at, what did I say?
So you were recently featured at a Speaker Slam event, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
the same night that Marcos Mendoza went on to win the Grand Slam?
Yeah, there was a conference they ran in the earlier part of the day. So I was the first speaker for the conference, the Momentum Conference, and then there was the competition in the evening.
Okay.
It was the same day, yeah.
Okay. Same day, two different parts to it. So when people see you now, with your social media, with your pictures featured in different prominent places, they see this successful photographer. And maybe we have some listeners that are beginner photographers and they see what you do and they say, man, that guy's so good. Like I should probably just quit. I could never be that good. For those people, they're seeing kind of a final product, even though you're still developing, you're always getting better. They're looking at essentially more of a final product. So I like to go back to the beginning to show everyone that, there's a journey here. that, you know, we all started in diapers. We didn't have these skills to begin with. And it took having vision and hard work and all these things to get to where we are. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning. I'd like to start with you as a child. When you think back to growing up, what comes to mind for you? I know photography came a lot later, but just as a child, when you think of your childhood, what do you think of?
I had nothing to do with art, didn't know anything about photography. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I sucked at school. I was really bad at school, basically failing everything. But in Ontario, if you don't know this, they don't fail kids. They just give you like 50s because they just want to push you along. Later, I discovered I was like dyslexic, and I wasn't dumb, but they put me on all like the ESL classes, even though I basically grew up here. So school was tough on that front. Sports were a great outlet. Um, yeah, I just remember playing and being active and baseball and basketball and just getting dirty in the parks and the forests around me. Um, those are my memories as a young child.
Yeah, I found that school wasn't always the greatest when it came to creative people and when it came to entrepreneurs. Like those types, it seems like school doesn't know what to do with them. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, it's not built for that. It's built, there's a lot
It's
of
built for factory workers. That's the
exactly.
original.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're an outside of the box thinker or have a neurodivergency, you can get into trouble. And I was in trouble. And so I mostly just got sick and faked illness. And then that exacerbated the situation because now you're actually missing weeks of school at a time and you are actually behind. And so somewhere along the line, I got in my head that, I was entrepreneurial when I was younger. I was not creative or artistic in any way because that wasn't a possibility. Like it didn't exist in my consciousness. And so, like I sold fake IDs and that was my first business. And I made some good money doing that. And I was resourceful. I hope my mom's not watching this, but I sold some weed when I was a kid, you know?
I sold some mixtapes like before people knew how to download songs. I would have a list of like 200 illegally downloaded songs and they could choose
Yes,
their favorite 20 and I'd make a mixtape. So
that's
I made
amazing.
a few $1,000s like that as a kid. So that's my illegal entrepreneurship, just to make you feel better right now.
Yeah, I didn't do it for long because the weed smells. I'm like, I can't keep this stuff in my house. Um, but yeah, like I got in my head, I want to be in business. And then I got in my head that to get into business, you need to be good at school and you should go to university. And I'm like, damn, how am I going to go to university? I like suck at school. And then in the last year of school, I realized that if I get a bunch of highlighters and a ruler and a headphone and not go to class, I can actually learn the stuff and do really well in tests. And I went from like the worst kid in the school to the highest marks in most of my classes. And then they were about to like kick me out of school because they're like, you're obviously cheating. How did you do that? I'm like, look at my textbooks. Like, I don't know. I don't learn. They didn't know what dyslexia was. And like, it wasn't a conversation. They're like, okay, well, just keep up what you're doing. Don't go to class and keep doing well. And then I got into like University of Toronto, which was like a really good university. Um, but yeah, it was like this weird experience of being convinced I'm really stupid because everyone kept telling me that they do these institutional testing and they're like, you don't even know how to spell bike. And it's like, I know how to spell bike, but the words would jumble, you know? And then being like, maybe I am smart if I just do it in my own way. And then very early, I think like I was 18, 19, I started like an actual business. But my youth was, and I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. So it was like there were a lot of gangs and there was a lot of violence and there was a lot of fighting and there was a lot of, that type of stuff. And I grew up when like gangster rap was really popular. So a bunch of young men that didn't have their dads around with like gangster rap as their, you know, guide to life could be a recipe for disaster.
This quote came to me when you were talking. There's an Einstein quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, if you judge a fish's talent by its ability to climb a tree, it's like something like that. When it comes to, um, like the school system with you trying to test you in a certain way when you learn differently, you end up feeling dumb, and it's just everyone's different. So testing every kid in the same way just doesn't work. So anyways, there's an Einstein quote in there
But
that's,
what's interesting is so many people I talk to, similar ages as me, but didn't grow up in the school system that I grew up in, they're like, oh yeah, you're dyslexic. We have special ways to work with you, you know, and it's like just an interesting observation that's like not all systems and neighborhoods are the same. No one ever told me that. It took me like I was 30 years old when I discovered I was actually dyslexic. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. Why didn't someone tell me this stuff?
yeah, a lot of famous entrepreneurs are dyslexic, right? Like Richard Branson from Virgin, he's dyslexic.
Yeah.
It actually, there's some parts of that are a gift that allow you to think differently. That's what I
I'll
found.
tell you, I don't think I would be doing photography if I wasn't dyslexic. Because it's like my brain doesn't get words the way other people's brains get words. So my brain had to like compensate. And the way it compensated was it got images, it got feelings. So I could feel energy differently. I could see things differently. And so it was definitely a blessing that I know was pivotal to me being a visual artist.
And how much do you think that growing up in Toronto shaped you as a person and as a photographer? I mean, it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. Do you think seeing so many different people that it allow you to see things differently?
100%. Yeah. A couple weeks back went and just ran. Sometimes when I'm trying to get hyped for a big project, I'll go back and watch things that I'm really proud of. And I had a big shoot this day, and I just sat and I put like four things out that I'm like, oh, I love this project, and I forgot about so many of them. And each one was in its own way a love letter to Toronto. And I didn't even see it in the moment, but it was like when I zoomed out, I'm like, wow, look at that piece. And there were video pieces, and there were like just there were music videos. And before I did photography, I was a cinematographer. And so the city has shaped me massively, truly, truly massively. And like, this new project that is probably my most like successful from a number standpoint. It's Toronto. It's like what's guiding me as I walk through. Now I'm going to the cities in the States, I'm taking photos of strangers. In the back of my head, I'm like, what do I want to show the world about my city? What do I want to show off? But honestly, not in a BS way of like only models and only, it's like, no, my city is beautiful in such a diverse way. And I want to show that.
I feel like Toronto would feel like a playground for you as a photographer, because you have the water and you have the parks and you have like the concrete jungle and graffiti and warehouses and busy downtown malls. I feel like it's like Grand Theft Auto for a photographer.
In many ways it is. Yeah. And it's mostly safe. You still got to be careful. And and I say that safe with like a giant caveat that like I'm a man, and I think about this all the time. Like, I really don't think a woman could take photos of strangers, because it's a very, safety is an issue. It is an issue. Even in Toronto, I had a couple of like shady run-ins. And so there's a privilege I have as a man to be able to take photos in the city, but for a large part, the city is relatively safe.
Hmm. what are some of the jobs that you had leading up to discovering photography? So you got into photography a little bit later in life. You were like 32 when you got into it, which is
Mhm.
crazy, the progress you've made over the last 8 years or so. But what are some of the jobs you had along the way leading up to that? And are there any memorable ones that stand out to you? Maybe some funny ones, maybe some crappy ones. Who knows?
Okay, I'm gonna list them off, right, real quick. No, I can't tell you that one. Um,
Professional dancer. No, can't
that
say
one
that.
can't tell you. Uh, Painting houses, telemarketing, server, working in a nursing agency, um, running a tech, web development and app development company, running a social network for social good, working in advertising, working at a tech startup, working in film. There's a lot, and it's like there's one perspective that's like, you're such a failure. Why can't you stick to something? And then there's another perspective that's like, wow, what a pedigree. What a foundation for an artist who only discovers he's an artist when he's 30. This is a secret weapon to have these experiences in this life and these failures and these successes and like knowing how to make websites and knowing how to make videos and knowing how like all these different things. Um, so yeah, it's been a journey.
So we had a conversation before this interview where you mentioned shadow careers. So for our listeners that aren't familiar with what a shadow career is, it comes from a couple different authors. So you have Julia Cameron, the book The Artist's Way, and then you have Stephen Pressfield, a couple books, the War of Art and Turning Pro. Those three books are kind of like the Bibles for creative people. They mentioned shadow careers. For our listeners that haven't heard that term before, can you explain what a shadow career is? And you had
Yeah.
mentioned that all those things you had done, which have been helpful for you now, were kind of shadow careers to being a photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. Julia Cameron calls it a shadow artist. And it's a person who has a narrative that's like, I'm not really an artist, or it's dangerous to be an artist. They're like starving all the time or whatever it is. So it's not me. But if you track, your work career, um, the there's always this theme of being on the margins of true arts, so when I was working at running a web development company, I was on the business strategy side, but I'd always be hanging out with the creative designers. I'm like, oh, they're so interesting. When I worked in advertising, I was, a strategist, but like, can I hang out with the the art directors and the design? It's like I was always there. When I was in film, when I initially started, all I could do was producing, but I just wanted to hang out with the cinematographers and the directors and just jam on the creative stuff. But it's like, that's not me. I'm not that thing, And then it's like, how many times are you going to play this game before you are willing to actually connect to your truth of, damn, maybe I am an artist, And so for me, I went back to film school when I was 30, or when I went to film school when I was 30, and I stopped everything. And that was a huge risk. And the promise I made myself was, it would be easy to go in being like, I've got actually some producing background and I'm just going to develop Darius the producer. But I said, I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to leave myself open to see what naturally develops. And I fell head over heels in love with cinematography. And that was such a surprise to me. And I was really good at it. And then that like slowly opened the door to Darius the artist. But it was like a 3-year journey. And Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, was so helpful because she talks about all the limiting beliefs that are, if you become an artist, you're going to die, you're going to be homeless, you're going to be broke, you're going to be unlovable. And then, like I, in my 30s, discovered art therapy and created communities where like we can encourage people to step into their artistry.
Yeah, the way that Stephen Pressfield talks about shadow careers is that it allows us to be in the ballpark of what we actually want to do, but because we're not actually doing what we want to do, if we fail at this at a shadow career, it's not that bad because we didn't fail at the thing we actually want to do. So it's like there's always this buffer that saves you from failing at you want to do, but it also stops you from doing the actual thing you want to do. So it's this kind of gray zone in between.
Yeah, that's where I was for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. You mentioned that the book, The Artist's Way, allowed you to see different perspectives of how creative people think of themselves. Like, oh, if I do that, I'll be a failure. I'll die alone. I'll starve to death. All these things. As a musician, I'm assuming as a photographer, we run into this resistance from family and friends because a career in the arts is seen as like a pipe dream. You know, you're supposed to go to school, get that education, get a good job, play it safe. Did you ever deal with that resistance from family and friends? And if so, how did you overcome it to actually do what you were meant to do in the creative world?
Yeah, it's interesting because my culture, I'm Persian, only has three jobs. There's no other jobs outside of doctor, lawyer, and engineer.
Hmm.
And my family are all doctors, lawyers, and engineers. And I'm literally the only one that's not. Um, there was a general like worry about me, but like from a loving place. But I think my family just always knew that I was different. And yeah, they're mostly encouraging. Yeah. Yeah, they're mostly encouraging. They know I'm different. And like it got better when we could just accept each other. You know, I didn't need them to get the stuff I was into, and they didn't, you know, they stopped trying to make me into something I wasn't. And so, yeah, they're generally accepting, but like Persian culture, like a lot of cultures are not so accepting of the arts. But I will say this, like my culture comes from like Rumi is Persian. You know, like we have a lot of art and poetry in our ancestry. It's just like I don't think anyone is able to track how much money Rumi made as a poet. So that's a thing too. But yeah, it's I think I've been lucky in that sense.
Yeah, I think we fear what we don't understand. And when it comes to family, they just want what's best for you. They want you to do well, to be successful, to be happy. And most family members don't understand the arts. So it's like they don't want you to be poor and to suffer and all those
Yeah.
things. So it comes from a place of love. And what I find is generally once you find your way in the arts and you start to make money and do well, then they tend to come around because like, oh, he's figured it out, like we don't have to worry about him, he will be okay doing this. Have you found that as as you get more successful and your pictures get better and they're featured in different places and things go viral, have you found that the family has come around more so at that
Yeah.
point? Yeah.
I think that's also the thing
You
I'm
need
not
that
remembering.
validation like from
Yeah,
other people saying, "Oh,
exactly.
actually your son is talented and there is
Yes.
a need for his services."
Yeah, I do remember those moments before all that stuff, and now it's a lot easier because there's a lot more public validation for sure. But like the thing that I always come back to is our parents love us most of the time for most of us, even if the love is weird and harmful sometimes even. They're trying to do the best, but mostly they want us to succeed. And they're going to give us advice from their experience, just like everyone's going to give us advice from their experience. And so the question and it's like, for some reason, when it comes from your parents, it means more, even though you don't want it to mean more when they disapprove of something sometimes. And for me, I take a step back and I always ask myself the question, like, if I take this person's advice over and over and over again, I'm probably going to get to where they are in their lives, you know? So it's like, is that my goal? Like, are they, and it's not just with parents, it's just people. If you listen, if you take the steps and you follow the roadmap of someone who's probably telling you the steps that work for them, you're going to end up pretty close to where they are now. And that realization for me is always like, okay, so maybe it's not my family just because we share blood and culture and, history. Is like, whose steps, whose map do I actually want to follow?
So I have one final question about you growing up, and then we'll dive deep into the photography.
Sure.
If you and I were friends at 16, so I didn't get to Toronto until I was 25, but let's say I was in Toronto, we were both 16. You invite me over to listen to some music. What albums would you be playing for me at 16? Are you still in the gangster rap phase at 16?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 16, we'd be definitely listening to Tupac.
So it would be around like 97 or 98 or somewhere around there for you, I would think.
Yeah, there'd be definitely some
Tupac,
Pac.
Biggie.
I wasn't into Biggie until much later. Yeah, because you kind of like one or the other.
You have to pick a
Uh,
side.
Far, Far Side was still a thing. And here's how so I grew up like, I got into hip hop in Toronto before it was really popular, and no one I knew was listening to hip hop. And so I went to the record store, whatever it was, HMV or whatever that record store was, and there's like a section like this big. And before that, I was probably listening to like Nirvana and stuff like that. And I was like, the section's this big, and I just had this feeling I would like hip hop. And I promise you, I did this. That one, that one. And I pulled two cassettes, and it was Far Side's Lab Cabin, California. Never heard of these people before in my life. And it was Busta Rhymes. I
Nice.
forgot what like one of those crazy Busta Rhymes ones. And those are my first two like intros into hip hop. So I've always just stayed in love with those two artists, those groups. So there'd be some Busta Rhymes in there. There'd be some Tribe Called Quest for sure. But I think I was also starting to get into some electronic music. Maybe not quite at 16, but getting there because I really hope my mom's not watching this. But like raves were in, raves were starting to get in, and that changed the course of my life a little bit.
Hmm. And you mentioned to me before the interview that some of your favorite artists today are Kendrick Lamar, Hans Zimmer. What what do you love about those two artists? I mean, they're two of the greatest of all time. I mean, that helps. But
Yeah, that helps. Kendrick for me is just so groundbreaking. There's always this debate around, Drake versus Kanye, sometimes J. Cole's in the mix. And it's like Kendrick for me is the one that's just like miles ahead. Like when you listen to his music, there's just so much story, there's so many new sounds, he's taking so many risks. You can feel his people in the music, but he's also in this just magical subtle way. Like his last album it was like him experiencing therapy. There were so many themes about therapy. Eckhart Tolle was there, and like all these spiritual themes coming into this like intense album. And many POC cultures are not into therapy. Black culture, African American culture being one of them, that are like not really embracing therapy. And therapy is such a powerful healing thing you can do. And so this was an incredible step forward for culture, for Black culture, and like that on top of incredible music is what makes him at the top of the game for me.
I
It's not
sorry,
just about,
I feel like the equivalent of that moment is when Frank Ocean came out as being gay with Channel Orange. I feel like
huge,
those are
huge.
equivalent moments, breakthrough in that culture.
Yeah, I remember that letter he penned, and it was just like, whoa, take a step back. This isn't just about numbers and set. It's like a thing came off, you know, the collective heart, a piece of that armor came off, and we saw things differently and forever differently. And so Kendrick's just in that GOAT category. Hans Zimmer, he's one of those guys. It's like he's not like he's different than all the artists I listed to you, and he's only on that list not because I follow him and I'm into him and I'm like, it's just like every time you hear the song, his music, you're like, this is insane. And then you look and it's like, then you find out it's the same artist, right? Because he scores like the most epic films ever. Christopher Nolan uses him like for almost everything, and it was one of those examples of this like I didn't know who the artist was. I just felt deeply in my heart when I heard the music, and then you go, oh, it's him. Oh, it's him again. Oh, it's him again. And so sometimes when I'm writing or I'm trying to build creative energy, I'll listen to his just epic pieces and creativity is flowing.
Yeah, the Interstellar soundtrack is wild. It's super unique and it fits kind of the futuristic theme or theme of that movie.
Yeah, Interstellar, Inception, the Batman trilogies. Like he's everywhere. He did Top Gun, and it's like how do you take a classic but then make it your own? And so the dude is bonkers.
To wrap up with Kendrick, I remember probably a year and a half ago, I have, good studio headphones. I have a background in audio engineering. And I remember sitting down and listening to Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly start to finish. And it's like an hour and 20 minutes long. Like it's a massive journey. And I remember just listening for an hour and 20 minutes and thinking, it's impossible that one human being created this. Like I was so dumbfounded by the scope of it, by the amount of genres of music in there, by the lyrics, by his delivery, the musicianship. There's like an interview and a poem that goes through the entire album and it keeps building it. At the end, he took an old interview, I think it's with Tupac, and he built his side of what the interview would be if it's him and Tupac. And it's like, it's hard enough to just put out 10 great songs on an album that have nothing to do with each other. It's just, these are the 10 best songs out of the 100 that I wrote. But for him, it's almost like a movie. Every album he puts out is like a movie, and there's a theme, and I can't say enough good things about Kendrick. And that album, To Pimp a Butterfly, it's, even though it's only a few years old, it's on every list of the greatest albums of all time. Like, Rolling Stone has, say, the 500 greatest albums of all time. They have it at like number 11. Like
Wow.
it's already considered one of the absolute best things anyone has ever done in human history. It's wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that album. I listened to it many times. Yeah, he's playing at a different level. He's just playing like these guys are trying to like, let's come up with the best beats. And he's like, no, let's mash other things up. Let's play like, let's bring actors, let's bring poetry, let's bring just like a couple yelling and screaming at each other. And it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, like the album made me cry. And it's like, that doesn't happen very often with hip hop.
Way back in the day, I went to the Made in America festival in Philadelphia. This is the festival that Jay-Z created. And Kendrick Lamar performed. This is like so long ago that I took it for granted. It was way back during the Good Kid, what is it? Good Kid, Mad City. Swimming pools, all that stuff. It was way back at that time when he first broke through. And I feel like if I saw him now, I'd have a bigger to me at that point. He was just another guy on a huge bill with 9 Inch Nails and Queens of the Stone Age and Beyonce and whoever. And I feel like I need a redo on that one.
That's cool. You got to see him live.
Yeah. It was short, man. He had like 30 minutes. He was just almost like another performer on the bill before the big artists came out. So it was pretty wild. But let's dive into right into the photography. where did the love of photography come from specifically? So you've always kind of been into the arts, but then in your 30s you get into photography. Is there a moment where pictures and photography stood out to you for the first time where you're like, wow, there's something there and maybe this is something I should look into?
Portrait 001, which is not, it was like a year into doing photography. I stumbled into photography in a very strange way. Someone saw a music video I made that was like a music video that didn't even feature the artist. It was like a short film. It did very well and it made a lot of people cry. It was like, I was coming out of film school. I'm like, I wanted to do something cinematic and this song was perfect. And somebody saw, the girl I was dating's boss saw this music video and this grown ass man started to cry. And he was like, that was just so beautiful. You should, like, I can't believe you did that. Wow. He's like, you ever do photos? I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, because we do a lot of photo shoots. I'm like, oh, okay. And either like courage or just stupidity, I don't know what it was. I wasn't willing to tell him that I don't know how to take photos. It's a very different thing. Just because it's a camera doesn't mean you know how to do it. And I said yes to like a big photo shoot, like a full like campaign, not knowing how to use flash photography, not knowing how to talk to models. I didn't know any of that stuff. But I was a good producer, so I knew that I had a rookie photographer and he needed support. So, I did the producing things and I like talked to the agencies and I'm like, I'm going to be honest, I'm very new at this. I come from film. Can you get me like the best possible model? I need the best possible model. And I convinced the only other photographer I knew in the city to mentor me for 2 weeks in exchange for like a short film for her business. And it worked. And the client was on set and there's like 10 people on set. And he's like, these are the best photos we've had in 15 years. He absolutely loved it. And he ended up booking me for like 5 years and like, I don't know, 200 more photo shoots. So that was wild. But I did not like fashion, despite beautiful models, flying people in, renting mansions, renting warehouses, and working
Sounds
with all
pretty
these.
glorious.
Yeah, for like 10 minutes for me. And I was like, I don't like this, and I booked a bunch of shoots and I was editing myself at the time. And so I was like, zooming in on these gorgeous women's bodies gets old after like an hour. And doing that like in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I just remember having this thought like, this cannot be why my soul chose to come here. There's no way this is why I'm here, but I'm very grateful I got money and I can buy all the stuff to do better for photos. Randomly, I went online onto Facebook and I said, does anyone want to do like a really creative, stylized black and white shoot? It was like, I don't know, 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, no one's going to actually reply. 4 or 5 people replied and they're like, yeah, I'm in. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this style of photography, but I started a Pinterest board and I just started like liking the stuff that caught my eye. And just like Hans Zimmer, like there's the same photographer that just kept coming up. And I didn't know, I wasn't looking at his name. It was just the photos. And Marco Grob. And, like I really liked the style. I tried to study it to figure it out. And on that first portrait where I told Majid was his name, I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You're a guinea pig. This might fail badly. Are you cool? He's like, yeah, whatever. You're not charging me. We did the shoot. I sweat so damn much. I was just like, is this gonna work? He left. I couldn't stop thinking about these photos. I'm like, did I actually capture anything that's good? I put the photos on Facebook that night just because like out of like some crazy, I don't know, again, courage or stupidity. Woke up the next day and there's like hundreds of comments. I'm like, oh snap. I'm like, and everyone's like, you nailed it. I can see his soul. I've known him his whole life. This is the greatest picture ever. I want to book you. I want to book you. I want to book you. I panicked because I was like, that was an absolute fluke. I don't know how that happened. I deleted the post because I'm like, this is not good. But so many people messaged me before I deleted it that I ended up booking 20 more free test black and white portrait shoots. But in that first shoot, I quickly discovered that, in that first shoot, in that first few shoots, I saw this thing that made me absolutely obsessed. Everybody that came and sat in my chair had this deep burning desire to be seen in the world and this deep heaviness of shit. If people see the real me, will I be likable? Will I be lovable? Will I be respectable? And those two things just clashed. And I felt that in me. I felt that, like, I just want to be seen. I just want to be heard. I want my life to matter. But holy shit, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to do too much, because what if people don't like me? And that conflict between those two energies became my absolute obsession.
Who would you say are the photographers that have uh, really influenced your work or really inspired you the most? So you mentioned there was one photographer you kept seeing his pictures and
Marco
tours.
Grobe for sure. Yusuf Cash, he's dead. He's like a long time ago. He's done like Winston Churchill and like Marilyn Monroe and these type of people. He kept coming up. Um, who else? It took me a while to get into Annie Leibovitz. Like, I honestly did not like her photos. I wanted to like her photos because everyone calls her like the greatest living photographer. And I just didn't until I bought her book. And then I started reading the stories of how she made the photos. And then I fell in love with her. So she's hella cool. Um, who else's photos do I love? Yeah, like, it's like I'm a very weird photographer. I didn't go to, like, I'm self-taught. Like, I learned through YouTube, but I also learned through life, and like film school obviously informed that because it taught me so much about storytelling through images. um but like I taught myself so much of this stuff. You leave film school and it's great, but you're using like $100,000 cameras, and then you leave and you don't even know how to use a basic DSLR. My like 13-year-old cousin's teaching me how to use a DSLR. I'm like, why did I spend all this money? I don't know how to use the actual cameras I'm gonna have access to. But yeah, so it's like there's tons of photographers I follow online, but again, I'm not like the traditional photographer. Like, I'm more into like filmmakers that inform my photography. I'm more into dancers that inform my photography. I'm more into like amateurs that don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something magical. That stuff really impacts me.
It's
And
it,
you know
it
what? One last thing. You know what like really inspires me is the shit behind you. Like, the coolest art photography are album covers. They're so interesting, especially if you cast Spotify to like televisions. They don't just have like the image, they have this other TV image. So you can, like, it's like all this art comes into my house. And I just sit there sometimes and I'm like, why did they make this decision? Why did this artist choose this photo? And I'm just in awe. I'm not like judging. I'm just like, they're just so badass. They're so edgy. They can do things that other artists and photographers, the photography, like places that use photos can't. Like, just looking behind you, it's like not all of those are photos. I get it. But it's just like, and the other place you're going to laugh that I love looking at photos and getting inspired is malls. It's like a museum for a photographer, because I'll like walk by and look at stores, and I probably look like a pervert because most of the photos I'm looking at are like women, but I'll just stand in front of the photo in front of a display and just be like, how did that photographer light that? That's so cool. Look at that shadow. Whoa, look at that thing in the background. And so, there's beauty and inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that, back in the day, you had the big vinyl album covers, and that cover and the art was a big part of it. And then you get it now, then there's the smaller CD covers. And then now it's just, this big digital on your phone. You're not really seeing the art for what it is. It's kind of like a
Unless you're
lost.
casting to your television, and now
That's
it's
true.
like way bigger,
That's
which has been
very
such
true.
a treat. Yeah.
So it's hard for photographers to be unique, and yet your pictures have a certain vibe to them. How important was it for you to cultivate kind of this uniqueness in your photography?
Mm. I remember in film school, one of my favorite instructors, he taught film theory, and his, like most people you talked about film theory, they're like, that's the worst class in the world. It's like, it's so boring. Let's actually do stuff. And he was just the greatest. The way he would get you excited about things that you missed, and you'd see it again, you're like, wow. And he did a whole series on directors and their styles. And I remember going up to him afterwards and I'd be like, how all these questions about finding my style. And he's like, stop. Don't worry about that. You're so young. You're so early. If you start trying to find your style too early, you'll just be like this. And that left an impact on me because it freed me not to worry about style. It freed me to just follow my joy, follow my interest, follow my curiosity. And then years later, I step back and I look and I'm like, oh, there is a connective tissue. There is a style here. And like, I'm only discovering that now. When I look back, I'm like, whoa, how did I do that? I don't even know. And like, there is something that's consistent in the way I do photos or photo series. But I honestly didn't think about that, because if I did, it would have probably felt contrived or performative. And so my advice there would be just like, follow the joy, follow the interest, follow the curiosity, and then later start putting things together. But maybe that won't work for you. That worked for me.
Everyone's different. I'm gonna read from a list real quick here. So your work has been featured on Oprah, Time, USA Today, CBC, Forbes, CTV. What does it mean to you to be recognized by those institutions? And do you remember the first time one of your pictures was featured somewhere prominent? So normally I ask a musician, do you remember the first time you heard your song on the radio? And I guess that's the equivalent of seeing your work in like a legit place for the first time,
Yeah.
and what that meant to you or what that felt like.
Yeah. It like, it feels good and validating, and is sort of meaningless and nothing changes. It's like both are, it's great because it opens doors. You know, it's great. Like that is the reality. Like, hitting 100,000 people on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, like people care. That's true. Getting verified, it actually does make a difference. People treat you different, not in a crazy way, but it's like I go to a studio and I say, hey, this is, like they'll say, oh, you have that many people. Do you want an extra hour or two? So that's cool, you know? But ultimately, does it change anything? No, I'm still going to do the things I want to do. I'm still going to pursue my interests. It is, but like, here's the thing, like that voice is so strong in me. So I hit like 100 and whatever, I'm at 192,000 on TikTok. And that happened this year, last year, 2022. And when I hit that, or like when I started to hit that, I had 100,000, you would think the voice would be like, okay, I'm going to back off. Instead, the voice is like, that was a fluke, dude. That was just like a random thing. What, you think you're special now? You're like, really? Like that many people is random? Like, okay, shit. Then you go do it on Instagram, and you hit 100,000, and then the voice is like, okay, it could happen twice. Still a fluke. And you're like, you're just not going away. And then I hit like 55,000 on Facebook. And then now I have a little bit more to be like, homie, I hear you, but 3 times is a fluke. Are you just going to keep singing this tune? Maybe you should change your tune.
That imposter syndrome is so strong for
Just
everyone.
keeps going. Just keeps going. So instead of me being like, I'm going to do this thing and you're going to go away forever, the thing that like Oprah has this. I remember listening to her on a podcast with, I forgot, some like epically successful author, like top success, you know? I think he wrote the Four Agreements or one of those like Ruiz, whatever guys. And it's like, it was one of those podcasts where they forgot that it's a podcast and it was just two humans talking for just like 2 minutes. They forgot. And she asked the question along the lines of like, and that she shared this thing in this moment of like, yeah, sometimes I'm just like, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And he was like, yeah, I have that same thing. I'm like,
And it's like Oprah, right? Billionaire,
Oprah
like nobody's
still
done
has
more.
that thing. Exactly, right? You're like, she still has that thing. She's 60 something. She's Oprah. She still has that thing. And it became crystal clear to me that it's like, this is a forever thing. This is a forever thing. You got to deal with it. And then you got to work with it and transmute it to work in your service.
Yeah, maybe you would be more worried if that ever went away. Maybe that's the point
Exactly.
that you should be worried, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
If you could boil it down to just a few things, what do you think actually makes a great photographer? And it's, maybe someone has the best camera or someone has the best
Definitely
locations
not.
or the best subjects or whatever. But to you, what makes a great photographer?
What makes a great photographer? Okay, it's different than what makes a great photo. Because I think anybody can take a great photo. I don't know if you hang out with a lot of photographers, but photographers can be like very pretentious. I'm sorry to say, but they can be. They could be like, ugh, that photo, I could do that photo. I've seen that photo before. Oh my God, that he's not even following the rule of this and the rule of that. And because that hasn't been my identity for forever, and I've had so many identities, I think I can zoom out from whatever I'm doing and not be caught up in the ego of that industry the same way other people can. And so I like see amazing photos all the time from amateurs, and I'm like, that's incredible. That's such a beautiful photo. And they're like, wow, really? I'm like, yeah, that's incredible. Look at the moment you caught, but like it's a little out of focus. Who cares? Look at the moment you caught. It's so insane. Now, that's different than what makes a great photographer because that is an ongoing, consistent thing, right? Anyone can take a great photo. The thing what makes a great photographer is the same thing that makes a great most art crafts people. It's a lifelong commitment to the craft. It's like dedication. It's like constant growing, evolving. It's like taking creative risks. It's bringing your truth, your heart, your vulnerability, your anger, your joy, your love, your lust, like your truest self to the art form, you know, and doing it consistently because anyone can do it fleeting moments. You want to be great, you got to do it for as long as humanly possible. Yeah.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. So you're known for three different types of shots. So there's heart shots, black and white, sun chasers. For our listeners that aren't familiar, can you break those three down quickly so they know what those are?
Yeah. Um, so I'd say like the thing currently right now I'm most known for is the street photography, just because that's got like millions and millions of views. But that's a different topic. But so the heart shots are mostly for, speakers, authors, thought leaders, people who have this thing inside, this charm, this charisma, this magnetism, or this developing thing inside, and they want to connect people from a place of their heart. And it's like a 4 or 5 hour process where we only actually take photos for an hour and a half at the end. And the truth is, it like yields really great photos that work well on websites and get people booked for things. But for me, it's so much more important than that. It's actually, it helps people connect to that inner creator and that inner confidence, so that whatever they're doing, whether they're going on a stage or writing a book or talking to people in workshops or like developing a business, they just have more confidence. So that's the heart shots. The black and white is similar, except it's less like for websites and less for marketing material, and it's more like a soul journey. You know, it's called the black and white experience. It's a little longer, it's more stylized, it's more gritty, it's
Yeah,
more
it's a little
raw.
less formal, right? Like you can have hair in the face and
Yeah.
you're capturing something, you know?
Yeah, there's more nudity, and that's only when people really want it. People often want it. They've seen a few of my like, you know, shots where there's like nudity, and it's just way more like grit and more of whatever's in there. We create a space to see what's inside, and we let it come out. The sun chasers are an adventure. It's like surrender to the city, to the outdoors. You don't know what the weather is going to be like exactly. You don't know where we're going. Like they initially started with me again being like, does anyone want to do something crazy with me? Let's get up at the crack of dawn. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to play some music in my car, and we're literally going to chase the sun. We're gonna like, look, it's coming down on that building. Get out of the car. Go stand there. Bam, 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 bam. Oh, look, it's coming through that tree. Go. Brrr. Oh, look, it's going there. Like we're like chasing the sun, and we're trying to find lights and textures, and you know, like, oh, look at the graffiti there, and look at this, and look at that. It's evolved a bit more from that like renegade style, and now it's a little bit more commercial because lots of people still want to use it for business. And then the no stranger stuff is just like 30 second, 60 second photo shoots of strangers on the street, and that has a ton of grit. And it's like you don't know what to get because nobody thought they would be getting their photos taken, let alone like being in a video that might be seen by millions of people. So that's a real thing too.
Yeah, I think we'll spend, you know, 10-20 minutes at the end of this interview to talk about the taking photos of strangers, because that's
Oh,
got all the attention right now and it's gone viral and it's amazing. Like you really capture people and it's a moment. And I have lots of questions about that, but I have a few more questions and then we'll get to that part. You've taken pictures of some pretty famous people, Seth Godin, Lisa Nichols. How did those opportunities present themselves?
um, those ones in particular were similar to the Armin Shaffi. A guy named Giovanni Marseco heard about me through someone else. I did some photos, and he's like, "You got to come to my community." I'm like, "I don't know, it's not really for me." He's like, "You got to come to my community." He ended up becoming my like business coach, and still is my business coach, and he's just a phenomenal dude and has helped me like grow my business massively. Um, and he happens to be connected to some of the craziest, coolest, you know, most best-selling thought leaders on the planet. And so he, you know, I pitched him on an idea to create an experience for his speakers where, you know, like you want to catch people at peak states. It's interesting to catch them at peak states. So I'm like, you know, like usually people will come up to me with an idea and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Can you open if I had an alternative idea? You know, they're like, come take photos backstage. I'm like, not that interesting. I'm like, what if you let me create a set? And what if I capture these people right after they've come off stage, 5,000 people screaming and yelling their names? We sit with them, we talk with them for a moment. You know, we create this like beautiful experience with the team, and then we capture them in that peak state. And he's like, that sounds great. Let's do that. And so we did that, and it was wild to sit with these humans that are playing at a whole other level.
So I actually went to one of the first of those events. So the Archangel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I remember it was like on a weekday during the day. I remember I had to like call in sick for work at that time. Like I
Yeah.
bought a super expensive ticket to go. Something just, it was last minute. Something told me I had to go. I had to be there. So I call in sick for work. I go by myself. And there was Seth Godin there. Maybe it's the same event. I don't know. There was Seth Godin. There was um Sharma, Robin Sharma. There
That
was like
was years before. Yeah.
years before. There was like the biggest lineup. It was incredible. And from that one event, there was one guy opening. So it wasn't like one of the big names that were drawing people there. One of the openers talked about networking events and the power of networking. And from that, I went on to start My Empire Networking, which before the pandemic was these massive networking events. And that, changed my life. And I met all these people. So like a big part of my business success goes back to one of
Wow.
those events that
That's
I
crazy.
was just drawn to. I didn't know why. And I found out why afterwards when I took that one nugget and built these big events around it. So Giovanni's awesome. That event's awesome. And it's cool that you're a part of that as well. It's just a bunch of great people connected together.
Yeah. Dude's the real deal. He really is. I've been working with him for 3 years now, and like he he says what he says he's gonna do. He's so committed to helping people, and he happens to be connected to the most badass thought leaders on the planet.
If we have any listeners right now that are just getting into photography, do you have any advice for them to develop that skill, to start doing it professionally? Any advice that might collapse the time frame of what it might take to find success, or anything to get them started on the right foot?
Yeah. Um, Stop waiting. You don't need a fancy camera. You don't need go to photography school. Um, Most of us with the cameras we have on our phones, those are insane. Most of us have access to YouTube, and just start. And when I started, I told myself I'm going to give myself 5 years to get good, not 5 years to be the greatest there ever was, just 5 years to be really good. And that gave me lots of time to play. I didn't need to put these harsh standards in too early, and follow what you like. Follow, if you like taking photos of people, take photos of people. If you like taking photos of nature, do that. And if you're shy about sharing it online, create a fake Instagram, a Finsta. Don't tell anyone about it, and just post things just for you. Make it private. Just post. Just get in the habit of creating content. Like the practice is so important. And if you can't do it consistently, whenever consistent means, if it's a once a week or once a day, figure out what that consistent is for you. If you can't do that for a couple of months, then you're probably not that into it, and that's okay. But you don't need to wait for anything. You don't need someone to pay you. You don't need to have education that's not available to you right now. If you really like it, you can start and you can get better.
And you don't need permission. Darius is giving you permission right now to get started.
Yeah, no one gave me any permission. In fact, every photographer I talked to when I was thinking about doing it told me, don't do it. You are a cinematographer. You have an advantage. Why would you go backwards? Photography's dead. Instagram killed photography. Why would you go backwards? Stay with film. I'm like, okay, I hear you, but I think I'm going to try this.
It's a good thing you did. I have some kind words sent in here. So this is from Peter Katz, who's a Juno nominated singer songwriter. I'm a big fan of his music, and he has some kind words. He says, "Oh man, Darius, such a special human. I have the pleasure of knowing him not just as a world-class photographer, but also as a friend. And on all levels, he's as special as it gets. So genuine, so warm, so caring, so creative, so generous." And just to share specifically a bit about our shoot together, his process in the lead up to it was like anything I've ever experienced. He guided us to dive deep. He guided us to clarity. He guided us to understand what I wanted, who I am, and how to represent myself in a photo more than I ever would have been able to come up with on my own. Our day together was one of my very favorite days spent with another human. And when I saw the final photos, I thought, oh, wow, there I am, finally. I'm deeply grateful to him for that. He's truly a gem of the highest order. So it's Peter Katz.
Joel, you're sneaky, dude.
Sneaky
You're
brother.
sneaky. Um, that that fills my heart with joy. I love that guy so much. He's so stupid talented, and I'm so inspired by him all the time. I had an absolute blast photographing that guy. He's making some big moves, and just stop time and stop his schedule and to just celebrate how far he's come, and then to capture that moment in photos. What a gift that was for me.
Let's we have about 30 minutes left. Let's dive into taking photos of strangers. So this is all the rage right now. I remember the moment where I saw the stuff start to go viral, and I saw your social media go up to 100,000 here and 200,000 there, and I started diving in. You know, it's they're addictive, right? You click on one and then you want to see the next one. You want to see all of them. So let's talk about that series. And the first thing is, for our listeners that listen to every episode of the podcast that maybe weren't familiar with you before showing up here today, maybe they haven't seen that yet. Can you just share with them what the premise is behind that series? And then at the end of this, we'll send everybody to your social media so they can check it out as well.
Cool. Yeah. Uh, it's 30 seconds, 60 seconds photo shoots with strangers. Um, I walked the streets of Toronto, or I did one in Florida, I did one in Vancouver. Um, and I just follow my heart, and I see who catches my attention, and then I go up to them and, you know, politely ask if I could do a little photo shoot with them. They're usually surprised, sometimes resistant, sometimes say no, and that's okay too. And then it always ends with me asking them one question, and the question's pretty simple. It's just, if you could go back in time and share one message with your younger self at any age, what message would you ask? And yeah, so I pair the photos with a video of how I came to see them, introduced myself, how I took the photos, and then of course their answer at the end. And then I just put them on social media, and they took off. People seem to really love them.
Do you think that if you ask the exact same question, instead of at the end, if you just started the conversation with someone and asked them that question, do you think it'd be a totally different answer because it's like a cold call stranger asking versus you've shared a moment together and built some trust, and because of a photo shoot, they've been vulnerable, they've been transparent. Do you think you'd be getting two different answers essentially from two different people, even though it's the same person?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. If you pay close attention, when I, it's like this thing is there, like I've tried a lot of different versions, and it's like, it's really important, the choreography. It's like when I am taking photos, there's like an energetic, okay, 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 great, awesome. And then I'll say like, um, can I ask you a question, or like one question for you? And I feel like their guard is up for a second, because they're like, are you going to ask if I have to pay for these? Or are you going to ask for something? And then when they hear the question, they release, and they're like, oh, that's a fun question. I can answer that. And so I do think it would be a totally different answer. Yeah.
And where did the idea come from originally to start doing this? So there's the very first one that you ever did. How did you lead up to that?
Yeah. I saw a guy on TikTok a year before, and he like absolutely blew up. but it was like he would have fake people, and he like everyone knew it was fake, but he'd still get all these views because it was like so obviously fake. It would be like a busker or like a guy just walking down, and he's like, I don't want to be in the photos, fine. And then he rips his shirt open and they throw paint at him, and they're like, come on dude, like that's not real. But I'm not hating on him because like it worked. Like people were interested in that type of entertainment, and I'm like, man, I feel like I could do this so much better. And I feel like TikTok is such a great place for amateurs because the pros have their egos and they're like, I'm not going to do this at that level. But then the amateurs are like, this level is the best level I've ever taken photos, and they're so proud of themselves. And so they excelled and their followers grew, while the pros were just like, ha ha, this is not me. I have this other thing I do. And so, yeah, I was like, I could do this. It's going to be different. And then I was initially going to get people that had like a deck of cards, and they like each one had a question, and and I was like, so complicated. And then I talked to my friend Benjamin Dussault, who's a musician too, and he saw some of the early ones, and I'm like, should I change the question? He's like, no, dude, you could take this for a while. You could take this for at least another year. I'm like, really? And then I'm glad I didn't listen to him because like that was right when the first video went viral. But yeah, I just like, I'm like, I feel like I could do this. It feels like an edge. I usually have 4 hours, 5 hours with people, and I'm gonna now just compress that into 30 seconds. What if the photos look like shit? So my ego started to play a role, but I'm like, let me just play and see what happens.
So the clips themselves on social media are short, say 30 to 60 seconds. Is it must be at least a little longer than that, the actual time with the person, or is it actually pretty short?
Uh, like I usually have, because I can see the GoPro footage. It's like usually 2 to 5 minutes total.
Oh wow. So it's not very long.
No, sometimes like Rena, who was a guest on your show, asked me this because she loves them, and she's like, she'll message me and be like, I'm crying from this one again, and she's like, but I have a question for you. Like, is that set up like the inch? Like you meet the person, and then you're like, okay, now I'm gonna go actually talk to you, and then you record it. I'm like, no, what you see is exactly the interaction. I cut out parts in the middle that like we're not doing anything, but it's like some of the interactions are actually like 30 minutes long, like a few times it's like we just kick it and we're like, this is cool, like let's talk and let's chat about stuff, so you don't see that. But some of them are almost exactly the clip. It's like super quick, here we go, let's go, but there's no redoing, there's no setting up. It's just like that's what it is.
I feel like the most challenging part of all of that is just the walking up to a stranger and
Nailed it.
and cultivating somehow their trust quickly, giving them a safe space.
Yep.
I feel like that's the hardest. How do you break the ice? And it's, I've watched them so I can see the way you're interacting, but how do you get to that place of trust where they're okay to do a photo shoot within just a few seconds?
You might want to check the connection settings in the you triggered my okay Google. She's really jealous because I have an Apple phone now too, and the Apple and Siri and okay Google. So you are absolutely right. That is the hardest part. What people don't see is how many people I chicken out with. There's so many people that walk by. I'm like, oh, that guy would have been perfect. Oh my God. And so it's like, if I'm in the flow, like if I've been doing it consistently in the summer, I was going like every day. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. I've got the flow. But even when I went every day, like the first bit was really hard. I haven't been out for a while because it's winter now. So it's like, I know it's going to be really challenging the first person I go to. But then you get like, if your energy is maybe, it's not going to work. You're like, hey, can I maybe take a photo? You got to have this like yes energy to you. Um, But if you guys are like me and hated going up to women when you were younger because of that, like that fear of rejection, this is that, but like you got to do 10 of those in a day. You're like, you're so scared you're going to get rejected, but one positive outcome and just the energy changes, and so it's hard. And there are very different rules from when you go up to women. They're very different rules. Those women are way harder for me, and way you need to have different rules. Like, I never walk up behind a woman. I always make sure she can see me. I always keep extra distance with a woman, because like these are things I had to hear from people because I didn't experience. It's like, it's a scary thing when a man comes up to a woman on the street sometimes. And so you got to respect their space, and you got to be gentle. There's a bunch of us now that do this online, and there's a guy in France who always gets shit because he's very aggressive. He only goes up to like beautiful women, and they're like, no, I'm not interested. He's like, come on, you should do it. No, but I'm not. No, but you should do it. And so he gets a lot of flack for that. Again, that's his style, but it is a very intimidating thing because you're coming face to face with rejection.
Are you surprised by the amount of success that these videos are having online, or did you know that you were onto something special and it would most likely blow up online?
I'm surprised. Like, I've done a bunch of stuff that worked, but this like grew fast. Yeah, it grew fast, and I never experienced that. Um, so yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you could think it would be successful, but there's different levels. I mean, if you put out the video and it gets, I don't know, 3,000 views in 24 hours, like that's a lot. That's success. But when you're in the hundreds of thousands or the millions, um, that's another level, maybe beyond what you thought success would be with it.
Yeah, definitely. I try not to think about the numbers too much, and I was just like, because sometimes like the one that got a couple of million views, I was so excited about that. I published it on a Friday evening, and it did nothing, like no views. It was like so, and then like 10 days later, it exponentially exploded. And the ones, and this is true of my photos too. So many of the photos that are my absolute favorites don't really get any love from the public. And I'm like, I love this photo so much. It's one of my best photos I've ever taken. And then people don't see it the same way. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. It's just special for me. And I asked Seth Godin the exact same question. I'm like, how many books you publish? And he's like 30 something. I'm like, is there a favorite? Is there a book? I know I'm not supposed to ask, because like, it's like, which kid is your favorite? He's like, no, there's a favorite. And then he said the book's title, and he's like, it's one that never did well. It never picked up, and never did well, but I love this book so much. I'm like, cool, really cool.
I was talking about numbers with Dave Buckner, the drummer for Papa Roach on their first 5 albums. We were talking about numbers because their song Last Resort has over 1 billion plays online, over a
Wow.
billion. And I was just asking him about that number, like what that means. He's like, how can we grasp that? I live down the street from the arena where the Ottawa Senators play, and that's 22,000 people. So I picture standing in the arena. If it's sold out, there's 22,000 people. That's me, my vision of just a ridiculous amount of
Yeah.
people. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, I've been to festivals where there's like 100,000, 200,000.
100,000.
So
Yeah.
then I picture 200,000. And then when Dave and I are talking about thinking of 1 billion people listening to that song, it's like at some point you just can't
Crazy.
fathom what numbers mean
Yes.
anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That can get tricky in social media land. Like, I started getting like 50,000, 60,000, 100,000, a million views on stuff. And it like messes you up inside, because then you do another thing and it gets 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, and you feel like a failure. And you're like, that was like 2 weeks ago that I felt different. But then you kind of get that feeling stuck in your body of what it's like when something goes viral, and like everything you're like kind of chasing that. And I had to really consciously recalibrate and do exactly what you said about, you know how much 1,000 people, what it looks like? You know, 1,000 people looks, that's a lot of people. So then my new standard became, if I can get a video to have 1,000 views, I'm celebrating. That is amazing. And that changed everything. It like took that, didn't fully get rid of that like expectation. It's like winning a jackpot one time and you're always just like, I'm like, is it gonna happen again? Is it gonna happen again? But yeah, 1,000 people is a lot of people. 1 billion people is a shit ton of people.
Yeah, man. I've done networking events where there's 130 people and it's like packed. You're like, oh my God, there's so many people. And I've done open mics where there's 300 people. And you're like, this is a ridiculous amount of people that showed up here today. And that's 300 people. So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
when you get 1,000 views and you're like, oh, it's not that many. It's like, if these are real people surrounding you, that's a lot. You've reached a lot of people with your work. What opportunities have presented themselves with the success of this series online? Has there been anything new, like maybe someone has reached out that normally wouldn't reach out because they saw it, or people booking photo shoots specifically referencing what they saw online with a video?
Yeah. All of that has happened, which has shocked me because like the black and white, the street photography looks nothing like my other photography, really. At least, you know, it looks gritty. It looks like not polished in any way. But so I asked people when like a few people from the States book me and they're flying into Toronto for a photo shoot after. I'm like, what? You saw my photos of strangers and that's what got you to do? She's like, yeah, if you could do that with an absolute stranger who has no hair and makeup and didn't even know they were going to get their photos taken that day, imagine what you could do for me. Never a consideration that went through my head. A book publisher reached out in the summer and she was like, we got to make this into a book. She reached out to the literary agent for the Humans of New York author. And so, like, she wants to make it into a book, which is wild. Apple reached out, invited me to their head office with some of the top photographers in the country. And they gave us free phones, which was really cool, and asked us our opinions on the phones, which was really cool. Speaker Slam reached out and offered me my first paid speaking gig, which was wild. This
They're
really cool
the
guy.
Elite Speakers Academy came into play there. You know that
It did. It did.
little help might have helped a little bit in the
Yeah.
background. Yeah.
Yeah. This really cool podcaster, Joel.
Damn,
He
man,
reached
the
out.
achievements 2023 just breaking through to the mainstream here.
Yeah.
That's
But here's the other thing that happened that was super cool. Artists from Africa, artists from Brooklyn reached out. You know, this one particular guy, Romeo, he reached out. He's like, I love this art. I'm so inspired by these photos. Do you think I can make one of your photos into a painting? I'm like, sure. I don't see what the problem with that is. And he made like 10 of them into like these giant paintings. And then he put the person's like lesson, the words for the lesson in the
oh wow.
painting. And they're like, and then he made the behind the scenes of how he made them. And now he's doing this, like, I think he's in Angola and he's doing like an art gallery with the, and I'm like, what? This is so crazy. Yeah. So like, that was really cool. I got thousands and thousands of DMs from people that are like, I'm talking to strangers now. I'm making music with strangers. I'm taking photos of strangers with my iPhone. And it was just like, that was so cool.
One of your most popular clips is you taking pictures of someone who ended up actually being a photographer as well. Why do you think that clip, why people love that one so much? It's
Yeah,
a
that was
guy with a
early
beard.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the first ones. Here's the other thing. So many of the ones that went viral, I was like, this is not going to do well. So many of the ones that didn't go viral, I was like, this is gonna pop. And it was such a humbling experience of like, dude, you don't know shit. Just do the work. Stop with this trying to figure that stuff out. Do the work. Do you like the person you're talking to? Do you like the photos? Do you just do the work? And he was one of them that I'm like, I don't think people are gonna like this. I really don't think it's just like he takes so long to answer the question. And I did 3 cuts. That was early. In the first cuts, it was fast. I was like, I killed his pause. And I sat there for a day and I thought about it. I'm like, the whole thing is the pause. His answer was like, think before you speak. And he thought before he spoke. And I deleted the thinking just to stick with the algorithm and make things faster. I'm like, I'm killing the essence of this man and his lesson. So then I went back the next day. I'm like, I'm leaving it. I'm leaving the whole, like him just sitting there thinking. And I think part of it was like the message, like think before you speak, and how sincere it was. And I think the other thing people seem to like is when people are like, no, I don't want, I'm not good at photos, because that's such a universal thing. Everyone thinks they suck at photos. And when they see someone voicing that thing they have inside them, and then they see the photos, I think it gives them hope for a moment of like, if he hates photos and his photos look good and I hate photos, maybe my photos could look good.
So you had mentioned that had you known that he was also a photographer, you probably wouldn't have approached him. Why is that?
It's like intimidating, you know. You gotta take a photo. There's a few people that I've now come across that were photographers, and like they've come with their own energy and their own style, and they're judging, and maybe that's all my bullshit and my projections. But I have taken actually photos of lots of photographers. I get booked by photographers a bunch. So I, from just muscle memory and experience, know it's fine. It's like you got to change your style a little bit, but I would have probably missed the dude if I knew that ahead.
Does part of you hate that you're a great photographer and you can't really take photos of yourself, because you're on the other side of the camera?
Absolutely not. I've
No.
taken many photos of myself. Yeah.
Is it like on a timer? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So yeah, like my insight timer, um it's an app, a meditation app. So like that photo, I forgot I took that photo. I'm like, I love this photo, and it's getting so much play. It's been seen like tens of thousands of times. And I'm like, I just took it right here on a timer. Yeah. I like taking photos of myself now. I hated photos of myself 5 years ago. Absolutely loathed photos of myself. But now I have a very different relationship with my human and my body, and I want to document my experience as much as possible because it's fleeting.
Yeah, it's life is fleeting. We're going back to that original angst at the start,
Mm-hmm.
knowing the end date is coming at some point. After you take a photo of a stranger, do you give them a card or something so that they can go see those pictures or those videos afterwards?
Yeah, I do now. I give them one of these, and yeah, I'm like, hey, if you're interested, and some people just don't. They've never seen the photos, and some people are like, I want to see them right now.
You must, as you're taking the pictures, you must show them what they look like.
Not always.
No, they just agree basically to provide the corpse that's getting pictures taken of without wanting to see them.
Yeah, most times actually.
That's
And then
crazy.
they'll take the card, and then like a couple of minutes later, they'll add me to Facebook or to Instagram, and then they'll message me like, "Damn, dude, these are good. I can't wait to see my photos."
Is your brain now wired as a photographer to see potential great
All
pictures
the time.
everywhere?
All the time. Yeah, great pictures, great people, great. Yeah, like that's my favorite thing about being a photographer. Like everyone's job is different. And like last year, it occurred to me that my job, I'm pretty sure I was on a mushroom journey, but I'm like, my job is to find beauty. Like that's what that's what I do. I was like, oh man, look at that light. what? Look at that contrast. Holy shit. Look at her hair. Damn. Look at his smile. And I'm constantly honing in my ability to find beauty everywhere. And you can't turn that off just because you're not in a photo shoot anymore. So then, like, I'm just constantly walking around life finding beauty because of this craft. I'm like, thank you, God. Are you joking? This is what like my brain is wired to do. Find beauty everywhere.
How can one man be so blessed? I mean, that's the best career anyone could
The
have.
best. But it's like the absolute joy is I've been doing photography workshops now, and to activate other people's beauty antennas, and to like, we do this exercise where like they see the space and I get them to close their eyes and I walk them through a little, like almost meditation about resetting their eyes and seeing things for the first time. And I give them some language about like things to look for. And then they open their eyes and then it's like a whole new world. And they're like, I can see the textures now. I can see the highlights and the shadows. And I'm like, all this was here the whole time. I'm like, yeah, it's here the whole time.
The equivalent of what you get as a photographer, where you have the eye for it. You can't turn it off. You're always seeing beauty or looking for beauty. With a background in audio engineering, I have that when it comes to audio. So it's like every time I'm watching a movie or a TV show, it's like I can always catch when the lips are a little bit off. They didn't sync it quite right.
Yeah.
Just from music and sounds, I can normally hear like, oh, okay, that's the killer. Like they haven't revealed it yet, but there's a little shift that's supposed to make you feel a certain way, and like, oh, that
Yeah.
person's gonna die next, and it's like everything's.
That's crazy.
It's like you can see into the matrix with the audio, probably the equivalent of you with the visual for photography.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, just because you're in photography or in music doesn't mean you're tuned in for beauty. I'm sure there's people that are looking for misery. They're looking for justice or injustice in their photos, My style is I'm looking for beauty. And it's not traditional all the time. It's something else.
You've done a lot of photo shoots over the years. Do Is there one photo shoot at all that stands out as being a favorite? For there could be a million different reasons of why it would be a favorite, but is there just one that you go back to that for some reason there's some magic there?
There's so many. Um,
This is the picking your favorite child thing that we just went
Yeah,
over.
yeah, 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 yeah. In this moment, I'll pick a favorite child. I don't want it to be my favorite forever. Um, Liz Gilbert, who has been so instrumental in my life, in my artistry. She wrote Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which was cool and mega successful. But she wrote Big Magic, which I thought was just so much better for me, at least. It's like how to live a creative life. And she's changed my life on 3 separate occasions massively. And when I got to take photos of her, and the shoot almost got canceled on the day before, and my heart almost broke, and I pulled some strings and made sure it happened. And that was really powerful because I had like 15 minutes to get the shot, and all the people were in the room, and it was really intense. And I was like, I know I have only like 15 minutes. Actually, I think I had like 5 minutes to get the shot. Then she extended it to 15 after she chatted with me. But I was like, Liz, I know we have a very short time together. But before I take any photos, I just gotta tell you that like you massively changed my life. And she just like felt me in that moment, and then like stopped the photo shoot and came and gave me a big hug. And then we did the photos, and then she gave me another big hug, and then she whispered in my ear something like, you're one of the good ones. And that just forever stayed with me. I don't even know what she means, to be honest, but I'll receive it. And I listen to her a lot. I read her stuff a lot. And it's just like, oh, they say don't meet your heroes. And I did. And I don't regret it.
She's an exception to that rule of not meeting your heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read Eat, Pray, Love when it came out, and then last year I read Big Magic, and we just talked about the books that we would consider the Bible for creative people. We were talking about
Big
Julia
Magic
Cameron. Yeah,
for
Big
sure.
Magic you would have to put in there as well.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an inspiring one. And speaking of inspiring, I have our final quote here. You already mentioned Rena Rovanelli of Speaker Slam. So she sent in some kind words for you. She says, every now and then in life, someone really mind blowingly exceptional comes along. In my sphere, that someone is Darius. You could ask 100 or 1,000 people who know him, and they would all say, oh, Darius, I love that guy. He's incredible. And that's just what he is. He's an incredible photographer. He's an incredible creative genius, and he's an incredible soul, making an incredible difference in this world. I love Darius and every single thing he creates. That's from Rena.
This is the best podcast ever. I'm just being showered with love from extraordinary humans. I love Rena. She's also changed my life and given me so many opportunities, and we just keep supporting each other. She's doing so much for this city, for this world, and I'm blessed that she thinks so fondly of me. Thank you.
So I just have a few rapid fire questions and then we'll wrap up. Is that okay? We'll blast through some rapid fire.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. Here we go. Rapid fire questions, quick answers. What would you be doing if you didn't become a photographer?
I'd be a writer.
Are there any other photographers out there that deserve our attention that our listeners should go check out? So you already mentioned the ones that influenced you. It just right now, any photographer comes to mind that our listeners should go check out.
There's just so many. Be nice to young photographers is all I want to say.
What would you change about the photography industry?
I would make it more accessible to younger humans that aren't in fancy rich schools.
What are the top misconceptions that people have about photographers?
That they all have really beautiful, sexy beards. No, just kidding. Misconceptions about photographers are that they're the only people who can take nice photos. Anyone can take an absolutely astonishing, epic photo.
What's the best advice you've ever received? Some of these are hard questions.
Yeah, anytime you say best or favorite, it's like my rebellious side comes out. The best advice I ever received.
And these can just be whatever's coming to mind first thought,
Yeah,
you know?
the best advice I ever received was all beliefs are bullshit, but all beliefs are true if you put enough energy behind them. So pick the best beliefs that will let you live the best life for you.
Do you have a $1 million idea that you're sitting on?
No, I only have $1 billion ideas.
$1 billion.
I've like got $1,000 million ideas. Yes, the answer is yes. Did you need more than that?
No, that's good. We'll go with that. If you could sit down for a conversation with anybody, who would it be and why?
Alive, dead?
Either. Some guests say, "Oh, it's weird when you say dead because they're like bringing someone back from the dead." But yeah, either. Whatever. Again, the first thing that comes to mind.
I would love to hang out with Rumi.
You could ask him how much he
Yeah.
generated with
How
his
much did you make?
poetry.
Did your parents bother you about your income?
What's your biggest fear?
Becoming someone that's not me.
What are the things outside of photography that bring you joy?
Dancing, contact dance, salsa, bachata, art, babies, puppies.
Lots of cute things.
Yeah. Beautiful, intimate, cosmic, sexual experiences.
What's the best live concert you've ever seen? Tell me you went and saw some gangster rap at some point.
No, definitely didn't. The best concert, the live concert I ever saw was I really enjoyed Bad Bad Not Good, but let me see. Best live concert. Yeah, maybe Bad Bad Not Good. That was a great party. Yeah.
What would your final death row meal be? So obviously you're wrongfully convicted, but you get one final meal. You could have a drink with it. You could have a dessert. It's your final meal. What do you choose?
Damn, son. Damn. So much good food. Um, I really like horma sabzi.
I don't know what that is.
It's a Persian stew, and it's so damn good. And I've been talking about it all week, and now I'm gonna go have to make it or buy it because my mouth is salivating. Yeah.
Good answer. So just a final few questions. These are no longer rapid fire. You can take however long you need to answer these. They're a little bit more difficult, a little bit deeper. Do you have any dreams that still have not been attained? Is there like a vision
Oh
that you
my
have of
god,
the
yes,
future?
absolutely. I'd be dead if I didn't. I have so many dreams. Have you seen my shirt, dude?
Dreamer. There you yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
bad if you had a dreamer shirt on and you said, no, I have no
yeah,
dreams.
no dreams. I don't believe in dreams.
Yeah.
You like the I have infinite amounts of ideas, which is sometimes a bad thing. So yes, so many dreams. I'm consistently dreaming, and I'm okay with that.
Is there any dream right now that really gets you out of bed in the morning excited? Anything that stands out more than anything else?
I want to have a kid.
That's a big one. Got to keep the future generations going.
Yeah, that's what came up. I'm very interested and excited about family, and it's been challenging because my obsession and my energy and time I've gone into art and entrepreneurship, and now I'm trying to find balance to do both.
Final two questions. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
Those are two questions.
So that's one question.
One question, got it.
Yeah. Most proud of
Um,
and most grateful for.
I am most proud that I keep my heart open. I've wanted to close it, and it's been closed for a very long time. And I keep opening it one layer at a time. And despite whatever happens, I've just made this decision that I'm going to continue with my heart wide open and continue being me because it's stupid easy to lose yourself. And so that's what makes me the most proud. It's not any of the metrics or anything. It's like I'm showing up on these platforms doing my very best to be myself. And it's not perfect. I'm like, that wasn't me. I didn't say that the way I would say that. I didn't, that wasn't my voice. That wasn't my words. And so just being committed to continually being the realest version of me is what I'm most proud of. What I'm most grateful for, that my job is to find beauty everywhere. Come on, dude. How is that? How do people pay me for that? Are you like, what?
So, final question. We have a thread that runs through all the podcast interviews where our guest provides a question that we will ask the next guest. They don't know who it is or what they do, male, female. They don't know anything. They just put a question out there in the ether, and then it gets answered and it runs through every episode. So what's awesome is the question is from Dave Buckner, so the drummer for Papa Roach. And his question, I'm thinking maybe he was watching your taking photos of strangers, because his question is, if you could go back in time and visit your 12-year-old self, what advice would you give? So maybe he's a closet fan. We didn't know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he had no idea who the next guest was. So even if he did watch your stuff, he didn't know you were the next guest. So
If I could go back, 12-year-old self, what grade am I in 12? 12 minus 5, right? So grade 7.
You're like, yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna give the answer that, like, someone asked me this question, and it's the reason I became a photographer. And I asked 10 people this question. 5 of them were men, 5 of them were female. The men all answered. I said, if you could send a message back to your 14-year-old self, that's one tweet, 140 characters. All the men were like, buy this stock, buy this, like, invest in this company. And all the women were like, don't date that guy. And then one woman, who happened to be the only photographer I knew, asked me, what would be your answer? And I thought about it and I laughed. I'm like, oh, that's weird that she's asking me. And I thought about it for like an hour, and then I messaged back, go to art school, or go to art school, go to film school, art matters. That would be my message to 14-year-old me. So that would also be my message to 12-year-old me, because like 3 weeks after that interaction with that person, I ended up going to film school. Like, I ended up enrolling in film school, and then my entire life changed from that question. So that's why that question for the No Strangers series is so meaningful for me, because it actually like fully changed the course of my life. Yeah. There's lots of us that don't even know art is an actual option, and it wasn't for me. And so I want little Darius to know that it is an option.
And you actually followed your own advice after giving her that answer, which is good.
Very resistantly. I laughed it off. I'm like 30. I can't go back to film school. She's like, why? And I'm like, why? Why can't I? Shit, I don't know why. And then the next thing I knew, like 4 months later, I sold everything and I'm in Vancouver in film school.
And can you provide a question for the next guest on the podcast?
No, I can't.
So I don't.
That was going to be my question.
Well,
my question. Hold
on. We can't keep the same question going. To be honest, my final question. So this is weird, but so he had that question. That's the question that you ask, and my final question is normally, if there was a time machine and you could go back in time, like, it's a very similar one, using all your life experience and your successes and failures and mentorship and training. If you could take all of that and whisper, advice into cute little Darius's ear to help him along the way, what advice you give? Like, it's pretty similar. So that's normally my question as well. So
let me spitball a question. I'll find one. Let me think. So it's going to be someone who's most likely a musician.
Maybe. So they're not officially scheduled next. So it could be anyone, any age, male, female. Just, it could be fun and playful. It could be serious. It could
Here's
be
the question. It's a little, okay, this is a deeper one. Here's the question. Everyone always talks about, like, I'm going to assume that your guest knows what their special skill, their zone of genius, their gift is. Okay? If they know what their gift is, I want to know what's the hardest part of having that gift. What is the hardest part of your gift?
Awesome. That's a good question. I got that written down, so I'll ask them. So where can our listeners find you on social media? We talked a lot about all the crazy stuff that's going viral. Where can people go to see that stuff? Where can they go if, they've been with us for the last 2 hours and they want to say, hey, Darius, love the interview, or I'd love to work with you, or where do they go online? Website or
Yeah,
social media?
super simple. It's just my full name, basically everywhere. So Darius Bashar, Darius, B as in boy, Ashar. That's my Instagram. That's my TikTok. That is my Facebook. That is my website. So if you go to those places, you can learn more about me.
Perfect. As we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a photographer. I want to acknowledge you for giving a safe space, a safe and supportive space for people to come out and present their authentic selves. That's a gift that you have. I want to acknowledge you. Humans, we just want to be heard. We just want to be seen. And you provide a space where maybe for the first time ever, they're actually seen and they feel seen, and they can present themselves with your pictures that capture them in their essence, and they can be seen by everyone else maybe for the first time. And last but not least, I want to thank you as a fan of yours for sitting down with me for the last 2 hours, allowing me to ask all the questions, answers I've wanted to know, things I want to know about photography and all that stuff. I really appreciate the time that we were able to spend here today connecting. So thank you so much, Darius.
My pleasure. This is great. You are a pro, my dude. And it's clear you have a passion for this, and you have a passion for sharing your gifts and amplifying voices in the world. So that matters. And it's been an honor to be here with you for 2 hours. I can't believe my bladder made it.
Yeah,
It's
me too.
crazy.
I had a big smooth. I'm trying to be healthy. I had a big smoothie before this, but we persevered. So thank you so much, Darius. To our listeners, to the Darius fans, thanks for sticking with us for the last couple hours, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is, who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.